Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining the Microsoft 365 Community Conference Workshop Preview Series. It's a bit of a mouthful. It's powered by our strategic partner, Betechly. This series, now in its second of three-week run, is being produced every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and will feature a sneak peek into the workshop scheduled for the main event in Orlando this April. If you're watching live on one of our live streaming channels, you can discover the full schedule for all these previews by going to the QR code up in the right corner there, or the left corner. And we'll feature at those all the scheduled speakers for all the different workshops. As this preview series extends into February and March, we'll enlarge our topic area. We'll have panels and discussions between Microsoft speakers as well as community speakers on the different topics, the different sessions that will be presented and featured in Orlando. So we do hope to see you in Orlando this April. And so now, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our presenters, Andy Huneycutt and John Moore.
All right. Thank you all for having us today. Thank you, Lyman, for that wonderful introduction. I'm John Moore, and with me here is Andy Huneycutt. Say hey, Andy.
Happy to be here. Looking really forward to not only today's session, but Orlando coming up in April of this year. Hope to see you all there.
Yeah, exactly. And just a sneak peek at what's happening in Orlando. Again, that's going to be April 21st through the 23rd in Orlando, Florida. And you can see some of the, amazing keynote speakers that we're going to have. And you can join us. We're going to have both a session earlier on in the week, and then we're going to end out the week on Friday with our workshop that we're going to preview today. And our workshop is all about taking back your time with Copilot. And it's a real end-to-end, very demo-friendly, demo-heavy workshop where we take real-life scenarios with our fictional company called Jolly Roger Java, and we break down some of the typical business processes that hopefully relate to everyone in the business world, and we talk about how we can apply Copilot to those different scenarios and how we can, maybe not necessarily like transform using AI just for the sake of using AI. However, look at your existing business and how can we kind of, sprinkle a little bit of Copilot here and there to get boosts where it makes the most sense. And what we wanted to talk about today for the next, maybe 15 or so minutes is a section from our workshop where we're going to talk about collaborating with Copilot and bringing, over the past 2 years, if you've used Copilot, we've talked about it being a very kind of personal assistant, right? You're doing your own preparation, preparing for meetings, or talking to Copilot and getting ideas and doing some brainstorming with your personal assistant. But how do you bring that to the rest of your team and start, getting that lift from the other humans that you actually work with? Because, we don't just work in a vacuum. So we wanted to talk about how we kind of take our own research and bring that together into a shared space. And we're going to do that through using Researcher, Copilot Pages, and the new Copilot notebooks. And this is just a section. So join us for our workshop. I think I forgot to mention on the last slide, if you join us, you can use either one of our codes. There's Huneycutt 150 or More 150. It's just our last name. And that saves $150 off of your registration. And hopefully we'll see you guys in Orlando for the workshop or one of our sessions. And we also, tend to crash a bunch of panels and things like that throughout the week. So it's a very fun time.
I might add, John and I tend to demo live without a safety net. So we have a pretty packed agenda, but we do a lot of interaction with the audience that's there. We go down rabbit trails and we take some detours along the way and explore all the new features and functionality rooted in real world examples in real world demos. But that live without the safety net is a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks in the audience last year when we did our workshop with, hey, what about this scenario? It's like, well, let's try it. Let's see what happens, and we'll do that, in front of however many people, and during lunch we were experimenting and trying cool things out. So we're definitely not afraid to break it, and hit the limits when it comes to anything Microsoft. So moving into this demonstration on Researcher plus Pages plus Notebook. The Researcher is a new agent that actually has come out in the past year, which uses these reasoning capabilities to do long form research. And you can do research based off of just web resources or things that are in your Microsoft stack. You can search your work as well as the web. And something that's rolling out right now is the new computer use frontier as well, so it can browse the internet for you. And it's an interesting way to work with Copilot because you don't have to necessarily get your prompt right the first time, right? You don't have to get lucky and do your one prompt and then have to say, well, no, it wasn't really that, it was this other detail that I missed. So to kind of show what that looks like, we've got a scenario where we're doing market research, right? We want to open up a new location for Jolly Roger Java and want to figure out what neighborhoods are the best to look for in Charlotte, North Carolina, where Andy is from. And I don't know much about it. So I've got just a really short prompt here. And depending on, the mood of Copilot or what's going on, how you word your prompt, you'll get sometimes varying quality back, right? I've got a very short prompt. Andy, his example, has a much longer prompt where he's saying, hey, I want to look at Charlotte and the suburbs. I want to, avoid certain areas, or, he knows more about the region of Charlotte, North Carolina. So he's able to give that additional context. One thing that's interesting about Researcher, though, is it comes back and it clarifies, because it's going to kick off this long-term, it's going to take like 10, maybe 15 minutes. And you don't want to waste all of that time with a bad prompt. So Copilot will come back. The researcher will say, hey, I want to clarify a few details. What are you looking for? Who are you looking to target? Things like that. So it asked me 5 questions to get better, extract more information from me. So I answered those. And then I said, okay, go, right? We're looking for young professionals. I don't want to be in shopping malls. Just look at standalone stores. And then it set off on this huge journey. And you can see all of the transparency here of it basically going through its reasoning process to say, okay, here's what we're going to look at. Here's some areas, knowing my own knowledge within the large language model. Here's the data or the details that John added onto the end of that prompt. So I'm going to tweak it a little bit. And then it goes back and forth, searching the web, coming back, reconsidering things like, I don't know about this. Let's go get more resources. It's thinking through, and reasoning with itself. It's kind of interesting to watch it be a little bit neurotic, because it will doubt itself and be self-skeptical all the time, which is good, but it takes like 10, 15 minutes. So we wanted to run it ahead of time, and it's almost like pulling the casserole out of the oven on a cooking show, saying, hey, look, it's amazing, it's done. But when we're done, we have this huge body of information that we can then pour through, and it's structured in like a white paper type of format. It's got, paragraph forms, it's got tables in there, even created some infographics by writing code up here at the top. It kind of, zoned in on 4 of these different, quadrants of the area. All of this in
neighborhoods.
Mega research. Yeah, these neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And yours, Andy, if you want to talk through yours, I'll kind of scroll through and you can describe what yours did.
Yeah, so my prompt was I'm sorry.
Did you use Claude or OpenAI with this one?
Let's circle back to that in just a second.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to add some commentary to that.
Sure.
So I did use the default reasoning built into Researcher. My prompt is a little bit more nuanced than yours. I was specifically targeting family-friendly locations that were near schools and parks with nearby parking, would support foot traffic or pedestrian access. I told it a couple of things to avoid. And then I gave it also the challenge of creating an evaluation metric to evaluate its potential locations. and then use the evaluation that it created to rank those potential locations. And as far as the clarifying questions, it did ask me if there were any specific suburbs that I wanted to include, or just to identify some of the most promising ones. I told it go with the promising ones. It did ask me if I had a target demographic in place, and I thought that was a little interesting because I said family friendly, but then I clarified, well, locations that support families with young children. It did ask me if the evaluation metrics should weigh all criteria equally, such as proximity to schools and parks, parking, and foot traffic. Were some of those metrics more important than others? I told it to go ahead and use its best judgment, that it was actually the expert there. And then lastly, did I want to analyze existing commercial properties, look at properties that might need development, or only to work with currently available retail space? I told it all of the above. So based off of my clarification off of that, it created its own ranking metric, which is really interesting. And as you look through the table there, it did apply a score to the various areas. And as part of that report out in the table format, it's showing things that are available, such as whether it was family friendly, parking, median income in the area. It also includes things like notable competitors. That's the notable column there. It tells you what's currently in the area, identifying maybe some franchise coffee shops or like some local coffee shops. I did also extend it to smoothie shops and to ice cream shops. And as I saw in there, it is also including donut shops, which I didn't think about at the time, but it used its own AI magic to infer my intent. And then it started doing a ranked readout, and I did ask it to do that as part of the prompt, based off of its ranking score, a ranked readout in order from its recommendation, and then give me a detail of each of those neighborhoods going down. So my prompt was a little bit more nuanced. It only took 15 minutes, though. It reasoned through all of those tasks that I gave it in 15 minutes. And what I did was stepped away and went and did some other work. I got a notification that my report was ready, headed back over to the researcher, had the report, and then we're going to walk you through how we got this into a collaborative document here in Copilot Pages. But I did want to take a moment and circle back to researcher. You asked a moment ago, John, about Claude. Let's baseline first off of the default inside of researcher. Talk about an option that's available as part of the chat experience today, and then let's bring Claude into the conversation. So when researcher originally came out, it was actually powered by OpenAI's reasoning models, and it was using O3 and O3 Mini, depending on whether you were in researcher or the analyst agent. And as John showed you just a moment ago, these reasoning agents create essentially a task list for themselves, and they iterate through those tasks. And sometimes they go back and add a task or remove a task, but they work through that task list until it reaches what it thinks is a satisfactory outcome, and then it creates the content for you. So those reasoning models we're using the O3 model. If we just go to a new blank chat inside of Copilot, actually outside of researcher, if you don't mind, John.
Sure. Yeah.
And we look at the auto in the upper right-hand corner there, and even hover over more. The newer models that Copilot are taking advantage of today do include GPT 5.1 as well as GPT 5.2. And both of those models have some reasoning already built into them. And both of them actually have the option to think deeper, to go through that reasoning checklist before it actually returns a result. The reasoning model, though, extends on that even further, and it has a larger context for memory and resources. So we can put more into it, and it can work with more information as it's actually processing now. So that's really the difference between the default model and what's available in the researcher model. Even though it does think deeper over here, it's not, to my knowledge, the context and its capacity isn't quite as robust as what it is in researcher. So let's head back to researcher. And then we do have to mention that now depending on whether your tenant admins have turned this on or not, you have the ability to reason with Claude opposed to OpenAI and their ChatGPT based models. So using Anthropic's Claude, you could take advantage of Sonnet 4.5, Haiku 4.5. I'm not sure if Opus 4.5 is available in there yet, but you can use Claude models for your AI output if that's your preference. But again, your admins have to turn it on. We'll talk a little bit about that in our workshop in Orlando coming up in April.
Mm-hmm.
The best way to think about these models is to think about different personalities with some of the internal experts that you work with within your organization. They might have similar roles, they might have similar experience, but they have vastly different real world application and knowledge. They have vastly different education and backgrounds. And so when you engage with a subject matter expert internally and ask the same question, you might get different answers or different outputs. Not necessarily right or wrong, but it might be more thorough and more in depth in one topic versus another. It might be more thorough in the response versus maybe it's going to be a little bit more brief coming from another user. These models are the same way, and some of them are going to have different capabilities built into them as they compete with one another in the marketplace. They leapfrog each other on the benchmarks and the output. But I can tell you from my experience, I've really enjoyed working with Claude. I've actually used it for the last couple of years. I've had a subscription to it. John and I've talked offline about it quite a bit. I've actually really enjoyed Claude and its writing output. And so I've used it for a little while. And so I'm really excited to see it here. It's not only part of the researcher experience, but by turning it on within your tenant, it is underneath Microsoft's business agreement with your organization for data protection, privacy, and security. And so it stays within the same tenant boundaries that you have with the default Copilot experience powered by the OpenAI models. But then you get to take advantage of Claude's models and its output, and you can do so within that same business agreement. So we've been experimenting with this now in our tenant for a couple of months, and I'm excited that I get to work with it in the enterprise tenant. And we'll do some demos on this when we're at the workshop in Orlando.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about the researcher, right? And the point of our workshop or the demo is like, let's take back our time, right? So traditionally we think through what would you do with research, and this can accelerate your individual time, right? You're not searching the web and hunting for all of this information and collating the data. But traditionally, before some of these collaborative features of Copilot have come out, you would then have to scour through all that information. Maybe what you would do in a real world scenario is you'd have your 20 pages of research. Andy has his 20 pages of research. And what we would do individually is probably go through it, look through it, try to, pull out the things that matter, maybe collate it into like a slide deck or something like that. And then we would theoretically probably meet and then share this with each other, right? And think about all the time that is personally, all the time that you spend together in the meeting, basically rehashing a lot of the overlapping type of data. So what we want to do is we want to get this into a spot where we can use it offline before the meeting and come together with that already consolidated view. So if I go back to researcher, I've got my big long research paper and I could go through it and it would take, a lot of time. But if I wanted to get that little boost and save time for myself and for Andy down the road, what I can do is I can start going through this in Copilot Pages. So I can click the edit in Pages. Then now it's created a loop object, a loop page that then I can go through and I can highlight certain things if I wanted to. I could say like, this is something that's really important. So I'm going to highlight this thing. I really like, the South End area. So I could highlight that, or because it's loop, I would be able to go in here and maybe add comments to it to kind of add my own thoughts and things like that. But I could then take this, cut through it, delete a lot of stuff, maybe add more things to it, get it into a page, and then I could share that page ad hoc with Andy. Like I could click the share button, I could click page link and then send it to Andy. That's what he did with me, right? He basically ran a researcher and said, hey, check this out. I put it into Copilot pages. I'm going to ping it to you over Microsoft Teams. I can see him typing together, but I'm going to do you one better. What I would like to do is I would like to pull my research and Andy's research together in something called a Copilot notebook. So this is a fairly new feature where I can take this page, add it to a notebook by clicking the little dots. And then now I can make a new notebook. You see, there's our notebook about this community conference and working on our workshop. It's very meta. So we're going to make a new one called, new locations in Charlotte for Jolly Roger Java. We're going to give it a little, a little icon of like a pirate because we like that. There we go, a little pirate flag. And then we've got those options. I'm going to add that page that I just had created. Actually, that's the wrong one. That's Andy's page. I don't want to go too fast. So I've now brought my page in here as a resource. And a Copilot notebook, it builds essentially a mini RAG, or a retrieval augmented generation system, where you can add all of your research pages, all of your Copilot chats that you have in Pages. You can add those to the notebook, but you can also click the plus. You can add PowerPoint files that you're working on together, Word documents, maybe even links and other things that you want. If you can click a link, you can add a public website link. But I've got one reference right here. All I've got to do now, if I want to start collaborating with Andy, is click the plus button up here at the top. And then I can then bring in Andy Huneycutt. Maybe I want to do Joe end user as well, another fake user we have in our environment. Send them an invitation. They'll get an invite in their email, just like any other Microsoft 365 sharing experience. And then he can come in and he can add his page to my notebook, which he'll do in the background. He can go in, click add to notebook, and then instead of one reference, I'll have two references. So now we're kind of playing in the same sandbox together. And what's important about that is because we've all kind of dumped all of our resources together, one thing is we get a summary right here of all the stuff, that's in the notebook, what the notebook is about. But I can say like, hey, I want to prepare for a kickoff meeting. Look at all the research in this notebook and give me the top 5 locations and pros, cons of each, right? So like we've collated the data. Now I can prepare for the meeting. So instead of creating like a slide deck and kind of, finding out that like, well, John did this research and he got this slide deck and he's got the same thing, 40% of it overlaps. We can let Copilot kind of comb through everything together equally, give us a talking points in a faster format so we can hit the ground running when we have our meeting. And that's kind of the beauty of creating a shared space that then you can collaborate with Copilot as a team member rather than just as like an intern that you're barking commands at and then having to read through all of it through the market research. You can really elevate it to be a member of this like 3-person notebook where it's me, Andy, and Copilot working together. So Andy, anything you wanted to add on that? Well, this is kind of a new screen here.
Yeah.
I know one thing is the quick create. I wanted to hit on that.
As you were demoing this, I was like, oh, we have something new that popped up live. This is live without a safety net, folks.
Right.
No, the only thing that I want to add to the notebooks is John walked you through a couple of examples of adding some content to it. The notebook does scope to the documents that are in it. So think about notebooks the way that you would manage projects. By putting these resources into one notebook, this is where I go for the market research related to Charlotte now. This is the source. And I don't have to have separate conversations with Copilot where I add these documents over and over again. I add them one time, and then I go back here the next time, have a new conversation with Copilot, and the research is already there. It's already scoped to that particular source. But one of the things that I would add to the conversation is that with these notebooks, you can give it custom instructions. And those instructions allow you to dictate how it interacts with you, how it outputs information for you as part of the conversation. So we could say no emojis and no M dashes, or it needs to be in this particular tone for this particular audience. So we can define the tone and the response format that we want out of it, so it is very consistent. I'm using a real world example of that today for a Copilot tip of the day, so that it's formatted in a very specific format, and all of these are created in a single location for me. And so it has a lot of real world value. So we get project management, we get custom instructions as part of it. The newer features that we have the ability to share now, so John and I can both contribute, collaborate, and take advantage of the notebook. And now we've got a tool that we can use for some project management, that we can use for some ongoing scenarios, and we don't have to do some of the work over and over. We've removed some redundancy from our workflow. We've also established, in this case, a central resource for this particular workload. And we're both going to be able to benefit from that and get a whole lot of time savings off of it. So it's really exciting to be able to take it to the next step, where we go from personal interaction with Copilot to collaborative, process-based interaction with Copilot, so that we can start creating deliverables and content from the work that we're both doing asynchronously, and then bring it all together.
Yeah. So to kind of recap that, step one, doing your own research, right? Running a researcher session. Step two, bringing it into a place that's more portable with Copilot pages. Step three, putting it into a collaborative shared workspace called a Copilot notebook. And you saw that we can add custom instructions. Another thing I did was I added our style guide to the instructions, so that when I asked it to draft a welcome message, like a grand opening announcement, it used the style guide for its tone of voice and things like that. So being able to kind of add these things as references, so that you don't have to remember to go reference it in every single chat. It's all about speeding up that workflow, getting good quality work done faster using Copilot. So your time is valuable. We're going to show you how to reclaim it in our workshop. Again, you want to register at m365conf.com, and you can use either one of our codes, doesn't matter, to get $150 off. And we will see you in Orlando for our workshop and other sessions, TBD.
And I have to say, you save more by using one of our discount codes. So make sure you take advantage of that.
Hey-o. Awesome.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time. This was really informative for a sneak peek and preview. It had so much value in and of itself. Getting to take the deeper dive when you go to Orlando is going to be a true, really valuable. This recording, or this webinar has been recorded and will be made available shortly on demand on Andy and John's workshop page on the conference site. Once again, thank you for joining us. Come back later today at 3 p.m. Mountain Time for Galen Keene, Ryan Scooten, and Ben Stegging, who will give a preview of their workshop. Are you actually really ready for Microsoft 365 Copilot? Have a great rest of your day, and hopefully we'll see you in Orlando.
Thanks all.